It's great to have you with us from wherever you're tuning in from. For more information about Elevate Church or to contact us, head to our website elevatechurch.me and take us wherever you go by downloading our Elevate Church AU app. We hope this message inspires and helps you to take your next steps in your journey.
Now, let me ask you a question. Is there anything in your past that you have filed under the category of what was I thinking? Anybody got anything in that filing cabinet? Yeah, me. Look, I think I've got a whole filing cabinet dedicated to what was I thinking. For example, and some of you know this, I've shared this before, when I was 15 years old, I thought it was a great idea to try and steal and shoplift a T-shirt from Kmart Midland Gate until the mall cops decided that it wasn't such a good idea, and I found myself giving my fingerprints at the Midland police station. So, age 15, what was I thinking? Then, that's 15. Then there was when I was 18. When I was 18, I purchased this vehicle. And some of you know exactly what this vehicle is, and some of you are like, what in the world is that? Well, I'm quite convinced this was the world's first unofficial bulletproof car, because it was a whole thing. Now, this was 18 years old, I bought this car. Now, I'll tell you why it's now filed in the What Was I Thinking file. It's because at the time, I was studying full-time at university, and I was earning a few shekels a week driving as a pizza delivery driver. Not in this car, by the way, but in a pizza delivery. In other words, I was kind of broke. Starving student thing. This car, when you pop that hood, has a 6-cylinder engine, what we used to refer to as a big donk. Come on, Phil. Gav? Give me some love here, bro. Yeah, no, that's a true story. We don't use that expression anymore because it takes people's minds to very unhelpful places. So in other words, the running costs of this thing, it had a bench seat at the front which could fit 7 or 8 people. It had a bench seat at the back that could also squeeze in about 7, 8 people. So this was like I was the mobile party bus, but it was just a bad idea. 18-year-olds, a bad idea. Now, I didn't have time to start to talk about the tattoo situation. Okay, well, it's funny that you mentioned that because when I was 20, having now completed my private school education, having now completed my tertiary education at the University of Western Australia, age 20 years old, I thought it was a good idea to join a hard rock band. The band's name was Eruption, named after a very famous Eddie Van Halen guitar solo. And they had the need for a bass player, and I was a very, very, very terrible bass player. So I applied, and they were obviously incredibly desperate because I got the gig. And for the next 2 years, I was the bass player for the band Eruption. My parents were so proud. And I say hard rock band. So I'm taking you back here, 20 years old. So late 80s, I guess. We did a publicity photo shoot for our band. And this guy in that photo, major league mullet hairdo, like up, out, around, down, business at the front, party at the back. No, this was party at the front, party at the back, sleeveless shirt, spray-on black jeans, spray-on so tight that it took all of the other band members to help me get them off. Cowboy boots. I decided cowboy boots were a great idea in Perth, Western Australia. And in this photo, I was holding a bottle of Jack Daniels. Now, I've never even drunk Jack Daniels. But I held a bottle of Jack Daniels. How many of you would like to see that photo? Well, sucked in, because here's the thing. First of all, I thank Jesus every single day that I was in that band before the internet was invented. Because there is no, you can never disappear from the internet. There wasn't even the internet. Phew! Plus, all of these copies of this professional photo shoot, I have spent the last 35 years scouring every single box, every single corner. I've been up in the crawl space in our roof. I've looked everywhere, and I'm telling you, there is no remaining living proof that I was ever in. Well, there's proof I was, because I just admitted to it, but man, this photo. Anyway, so that's just me, and by the way, that's just a few. I could continue. Things that are filed in the "what was I thinking" column. So we launched a few weeks ago this series called Set Free. And really the big idea of this series is the idea that God wants his kids to both be set free from things that are not his best, and ultimately to learn how to live free as we continue to grow and follow Jesus. And we're looking at some of the things that Paul, who was a leader in the early church, some of the letters that he wrote to churches around that many of whom he launched those churches. He would write them letters of encouragement, letters of instruction, sometimes letters of correction. And some of those letters he wrote from within a Roman prison at the time. And so in week 1, when we launched this series, we talked about what it looks like to be set free from shame. This idea that God wants us to be set free from the penalties of our past, and to learn how to live set free from the patterns of our past. Week 2, we talked about being set free for a purpose. This idea that we were saved from something and saved for something. And God he's not trying to keep that from us hidden. He wants us to learn our purpose and live in that purpose. And last week we talked about this idea, what it looks like to be set free to rejoice. And Paul wrote the letter we looked at last week from a prison to a church in a place called Philippi, and that entire letter is now nicknamed the letter of joy, written from a prison. He's basically demonstrating to us that it's actually possible to experience joy even when we're facing less than ideal circumstances. Now, the reason I started with the "have you got things that are filed in the what was I thinking" column is because today I want to talk about this idea of being set free from your past. Now, this topic does actually overlap with the message being set free from shame, because some of the things that maybe have caused us to feel or live in shame or experience shame are things from our past that were in the "what was I thinking" file. Some of them are things that were done to us that we didn't have any control over, but we've felt some shame that somehow we felt victim to that. Even some Jesus followers find themselves walking around in shame because they have a bit of an idea of of what Jesus wants them to do in life, but are finding themselves living way, way below that standard and just kind of feel this sense of inadequacy. And I'm obviously not good enough. I don't measure up. I'm not as good as that person. I don't have as much faith as that person, and so on. So that list does certainly import into today's topic of being set free from your past. But I want to unpack an additional list. And it includes some of these. Things like comparison. Things like small thinking, insecurity, fear, anxiety, inadequacy, people-pleasing, depression. And the reason I've sliced this list out separately from the list we talked about that might lead some people to feel shame is some of this feels a little less urgent when you look at it. Some of this feels a little less urgent when you experience it. And in fact, you could pretty quickly look at this list and some of you would be able to identify yourself in one or more of these categories. And you're sitting here today and you've learned to live with it. You've developed the coping mechanisms that have normalized this, as a part of who you are and how you do life. And I'm not judging you. I'm just saying, like, that's because this list is not necessarily going to lead you to a police lineup. So we think, well, it's obviously not that bad. And then we start to give all the reasons why this is okay. My dad was like that, so of course I'm going to be like that. I grew up in that situation, so of course this is how it is for me. I've been like that for 30 years. Obviously, I could never change and get beyond that. So what we do is every new day, we carry some of this into the new day. We're carrying it from our past into the new day. And some of us have been carrying those things from our past into the new day for weeks, months, years, sometimes decades. And I want to put it to us today that while this may not look like an urgent list, this is still a limiting list. This is still the sorts of things that will prevent you and I, if we continue to carry them from our past into our future, from living at the level of God's best for our lives. And I want to put it to us today that it is actually possible for you, if you recognize yourself on this list, to be set free from your past. So let's talk about that. Looking at another one of Paul's prison letters. If you've got your Bible app on your smartphone, scan this flow code. It's going to take us to Colossians chapter 3. So again, this is a letter that Paul wrote. It's again a letter he wrote from within a prison. He was in prison for the crime of preaching about Jesus. Hello. And one of the things that's unique about this letter to the church in Colossae is Paul had never actually visited them. This wasn't a church that he had launched, wasn't even a church that he'd been to, but he was continually hearing reports about them. And most of the reports were very, very good, were very, very favorable. But one of the things that had been reported to Paul was that the church in Colossae was struggling with how to let go of their past and how to embrace the new life that Jesus had made possible for them. And so he wrote exactly into that setting and reminded them, hey, listen, since you've been raised to new life with Christ, set your sights on the realities of heaven, where Christ sits in the place of honor at God's right hand. Think about the things of heaven, not the things of earth, and say this boldly with me, for you died to this life, and your real life is hidden with Christ in God. Right off the bat, Paul's reminding them that your faith isn't just about believing something new. It's about ultimately living something new. And so he's telling them categorically, stop looking backwards. Stop operating with the same mindset that you had before you put your faith in Jesus. That person is died. That person is dead, not like dead. So along with that person, bury the old mindsets, bury the small thinking, bury the old habits, leave them behind, and ultimately start moving into the things that God's got for you. And by the way, Paul was uniquely qualified to write this to them because prior to becoming this apostolic entrepreneurial church leader, Paul was a Jewish religious leader specifically tasked with the job of persecuting Christians. You know, the Jewish religious leaders saw this growing group of Christians as a threat to them. So they literally mobilized people like Paul to quash the threat, to eliminate the threat. So that was Paul's old life. In fact, when Paul started preaching about Jesus, a lot of the Christians, they didn't believe him. They thought it was a con. They thought it was a way of him to infiltrate and get in there and then just mess it all up. And he had to have people vouch for him that his new faith was indeed real. So Paul is uniquely qualified to talk about this is how things used to be before you put your faith in Jesus, but that person is dead. So with that, bury all of the stuff that isn't God's best and move into the new that is God's best. And one of the rookie mistakes that we can make is when we put our faith in Jesus is to think that we will just automatically start to think like Jesus. It'll just happen. Bit of Jesus, sparkly dust, and the reality is, and probably you do actually know this deep down, you actually have to learn to think like Jesus, to put on the mind of Christ, and to learn that, to bury and some of, by the way, some of the old ways of thinking and acting, they're like zombies. They like to come out of the grave and follow us around, and we're like, oh, hello, old friend. It's been a while. And if you welcome them back on the journey, they're going to come with you and just eat you alive. And Paul's saying, listen, you're dead, and all that stuff, it needs to be dead. And then you need to learn to live in the newness, but it's not going to happen automatically. All right. So, while I'm in the 1980s, 1990s retro vibe, let me take us back. Here's my pro tip number 1 for living the new life. Stop replaying the tape. Now, I know if you're under 35, you don't even know what a tape is. I get it. What does this even mean, Mark? Well, I'm glad you asked. How many of you are willing to admit publicly that you are old enough not only to recognize what this is, but you would actually know how to operate it if one was handed to you right now? Anybody? Listen to me. All right. Now, again, if you're under 35, let me catch you up. Now you can go and visit a local museum. There's probably one of these behind bulletproof glass somewhere. Anyway, this is called, okay, young people, this is called a radio cassette player, all right? A radio cassette player. Now, one of its many breakthrough, useful technology features was its ability within the 1 unit, people, what a time to be alive, to be able to record songs from the radio onto the tape in the one machine. Because there was a time where you need to have a tape recorder and a radio, and you need to have them kissing each other, and no, not with this. This had it all in the one device. So here's what some of us would do. We would design our schedules around sitting at home with the radio on, waiting for that song to come on. And we would insert a blank cassette tape. Do the letters TDK or BASF mean anything to anybody? Come on now. Some of you have started twitching as I'm telling this story. You're like, oh, I thought that part of my life was gone. Oh, it's all coming back to me now. Anyway, so you would sit there. Now you have the radio on, and you were waiting to record that song onto that blank tape. So you would then have the ability to take that tape anywhere and listen to that song on demand. Wow! Ain't no radio DJ gonna tell me when I can listen to this song. So now, wait, because some of you think that you're all that at the moment. I can see it. You're like, I thought getting old was a bad thing. All of a sudden I'm reminded what a great life I've had. All right. So those of you now, how many of you are familiar when you were getting ready, waiting for that song to come on? There was a 3-button trick that only the pros knew. How many know what I'm talking about? The 3-button trick. Thank you. And how many of you know what this is, but you missed the memo about the 3-button trick? Anyway, okay, all right, that's fine. Now, you're probably never going to use it, but let me explain. This is what you missed out on in life. Sucked in. Here's the thing. So the amateur move was to sit there and wait. Because when you wanted to record the song, you had to have pressed play and record at the same time. Which is easier said than done. I mean, it really is. And so, and by the way, and if you missed that, I missed the first 3 seconds of the song. I'm going to have to come back tomorrow night and wait for them to play it again. Ain't nobody got time for that. So, no, the pro move, okay, listening, was to 3 button. Press simultaneously, play, record, pause. Hello. And that meant the second that song came on, and by the way, if the DJ is a friend of yours, say, coming right up after this commercial break, and they tell you the song and you're like, yeah, I'm ready. All you needed to do was to unpress pause. Just one button, just release the pause. And hello. And then now, and by the way, all the kids nowadays, they're like, oh yeah, I've got my Spotify playlist, I've got my Apple Music playlist. They think they invented the playlist. You invented nothing, all right? Man, we were making playlists, but we didn't call them playlists. We called them mixtapes. You think, oh, hang on, that's what the rappers called them. No. That's what I had on this cassette deck in my Holden Kingswood HQ with my 17 friends driving around the streets of High Wycombe. Yep. My mixtape. Had my mixtape. Yep. And this is what you would do with your mixtape, is you would play it, and then you'd rewind it, and then you'd replay it, and then you'd rewind it, and you'd replay it, and rewind it, and replay it, and rewind it. Then eventually this thing would start to get spooled and tangled up, which wasn't a problem because you would reach for a pencil, and you would get it back. In you go, baby. Just keep that pencil within reach, I think. But even the best TDK and BASF would eventually, and that was it. But that's probably a good thing, because by that point in history, there was a lot of new bangers that you should be recording and making a brand new mixtape. But here's where this metaphor is going. The problem with too many Jesus followers is they created a mixtape before they became a follower of Jesus, and they've taken that mixtape with them into their new life with Jesus, and they're just playing it and rewinding it and playing it and rewinding it and getting out the pencil and fixing it because there's a little bit more mileage left on this sucker. I can hear it. And then playing it and rewinding it and not recognizing that's the mixtape from your old life. That's the mixtape from the dead person. The dead person created that mixtape. Why are you bringing that into your new life? And not just bringing it, playing it and rewinding it and playing it and rewinding it. And Paul wants you to know, and Jesus wants you to know, stop replaying the tape. Since you've been raised to new life with Christ, set your sights on the new realities of heaven. No more Madonna like a virgin. No, gone, dead. Think about the things of heaven, not of this earth. Your janky past might explain how you got here, but it shouldn't define where you go to from here. Amen. Do we understand? Yep. Stop dragging your past into the present. All right, some of you, I get it. You're like, oh, I still don't know if I can relate to that metaphor. Radio, cassette player, tape. All right. This is one we should all be able to relate to. Throw out your old clothes. I'm looking around. You all have one thing in common today. You're all wearing clothes. We're very grateful. Thank you. Very grateful. Well done. Always make time for that before you leave the house. My mother always said. I used to own an item of clothing. It was a pair of shorts. It's a pair of shorts. Now, in the spirit of throwback, and some of you, you're going to have to go way back with me on this one. This pair of shorts, the color was the beige, the cream, the off-white, the ivory, the bone. Was anyone with me on that one? Bit of Richie Benno action. Philip, you're disappointing me here. I know you're a Kiwi, but come on, man. Gav, what? What? Really? No. We'll talk about it later. Anyway. The 12th man. Very good. Anyway, cream, beige, bone, off-white, ivory, something like that. Anyway, pair of shorts. Now, these shorts, I wore them everywhere. By the way, I don't hate wearing long pants. The only time you see me in long pants is Sunday morning. Otherwise, I'm all the shorts all the time. But in this era of my life, I only had one pair of shorts. This was the one pair of shorts. I wore them everywhere. If you bumped into me at the shopping center, I would be wearing the shorts. If you were walking through an airport terminal with me, I'd have this pair of shorts on. Anywhere. I've even preached in those shorts. Yes, I have many times. And they became so synonymous with me that Louis and friends, actually from all around the world, nicknamed them The Short. Here's Marco wearing The Short. They just knew I was going to turn up with The Short. In fact, they actually started joking that at night when I would take off the short, that I could put the short down and it would stand up on its own. The short. Like an art gallery exhibition. That's. I mean, I'm telling you the truth now, right? And look, in the interests of full disclosure here, I hung on to the short for far longer than I should have. Okay, like really, they were past their use by date. Like long before I finally got around to getting rid of them, the short. And look, you could probably guess why. Because they were so comfortable. Me and the short. Living together in perfect harmony. I have been preaching here for 16 years. I have sung from this stage 0 times. And yet this morning, you're blessed. Twice! Yes. And I'm not even finished yet. Buckle up, people. I had fun preparing this message. But sometimes God calls us out with some of the things that were comfortable. But they're not optimal. Like they're past their use by date. Like you need to throw out the short. You need to throw out the small thinking. You need to throw out the anger. You need to throw out the insecurity. You need to throw out the people pleasing. I mean, yeah, you've learned to cope with it. You've even thought it's a part of who you are. Like, I've never taken these things off. But God's like, no, you actually need to. You can't dress in the new if you're still putting on the old. They are literally mutually exclusive. Now, I'm going to show you a list. And you're going to want to make sure that you're listening, but that your kids aren't listening. Because Paul actually went through a list of things that he said, and in fact, he says, here's some of the old things. And his instruction was and is to put them to death. In other words, you've been buried, so put these things to death. Here's the list. You ready? Hold on to your toupees, Errol. Here's the list. Impurity, sexual immorality, evil desires, lust, greed, anger, malicious behavior, slander, lying, dirty language. Listen, this looks like Paul could have written it in 2025. Not 2,000 years ago. It could have looked like he wrote it to the church in Rivervale, not the church in Colossae. Because this list seems eerily familiar, eerily possible, eerily doable. But Paul says, hey, listen, church, this list, put it to death. In the grave, where your old person is, where your old life, where your old person is, get rid of them. Throw them away. You can't walk in the new if you're still dragging in the old. So here's a question, and then I'm going to land the message. This is a question. I'm not going to try to get you to learn how to salsa dance, 27 moves in 1 minute. Let me just ask you, is there one thing, maybe from the list we put up at the beginning, anxiety, fear, small thinking, is there one thing from this list, just one, pick one, that you need to put to death? That you need to, when the clock strikes 11 and you're walking out of here or hanging around for coffee, but whatever, point being, when you walk out of here, you're like, I'm not taking that with me. My old life's in the grave, and that thing's now, it might be like the short. You might have been wearing it and carrying it around for 30 years. And you think it's actually part of who you are. But Paul's reminding us, no, that person died. Let this thing die with them. And then, of course, you can't turn up naked. You have to not only put off the old, you need to put on the new. Paul instructs us, put on the new nature and be renewed as you learn to know your Creator and become like Him. Growth's not just about what you say no to. It's also about what you say yes to. If you've been someone who's been carrying around small thinking and fear, then maybe the thing if you're burying that, maybe the thing you're going to need to start saying yes to is taking a risk. Not being reckless, okay? Not joining a hard rock band, doing something that you can add to your what was I thinking filing cabinet, but just like God saying, now give this a try. That could just be the thing. Put off the old, put on your new nature. Start living like God says you are. Start seeing yourself the way God sees you. And then we start to learn not just to be set free, but how to actually live free.
We really hope you got a lot out of this message. If you live in the Perth area, we'd love for you to join one of our live experiences. For times and directions, as well as information, head to our website, elevatechurch.me. For those of you beyond the Perth area, we'd love for you to connect with our online experience, which premieres every Sunday via YouTube and Facebook Live, and on demand immediately after. And to partner with us to reach more people by giving financially, head to our website, elevatechurch.me, and also download our Elevate Church AU app.